This video is not about a haunted house, as in a house that has a ghost in it. This video is about the history of haunted house attractions, specifically American haunted house attractions, a form of live entertainment that simulates the experience of visiting haunted locations or storylines typical of horror fiction. In this video, I'm going to touch on 3 key moments in the evolution of the American haunted house attraction: the Depression, the Mansion, and the fire.
That's amazing! That's so scary!
I spent a lot of time looking for books, documentaries, whatever, but I could not find any long-form comprehensive history of haunted houses. There are a ton of documentaries about individual houses, whether home haunts or professional ones, along with tons of promotional videos or fan-made videos about bigger and more famous attractions. But as far as I could find, they all focus on a limited number of houses with little attention paid to overall history. For general short-form haunted house history sources, the 2 I saw cited the most were a short but dense section of Lisa Morton's book, Trick or Treat: A History of Halloween, and Rebecca McKendry's article for a 2013 special edition of Fangoria. After hunting down an archive version online, I found out later, to my surprise, while at Netherworld, that you can buy it for like $8 at the Netherworld gift shop, so I did. Most short haunted house histories I found start by talking about Marie Tussaud and the Grand Guignol. Sorry for my French pronunciation, I'm doing my best. Both McKendry's Fangoria piece and Adam Warner's The History of Haunted Houses, A Fight for Frights as Tastes Change, which interviews both McKendry and Margie Kerr, a haunted house consultant and sociologist who studies trends in fear, start earlier. McKendry starts with the ancient Egyptians. Mazes, moving walls, self-opening doors, traps, and the use of snakes were commonplace in preserving treasures and dead royalty. Outside of maybe some traps, like pits or like false endings to tombs, I had trouble finding any evidence supporting what she's talking about here, but we could say the myths of these traps certainly endured, and maybe inspired the moving walls and mummy scares of modern haunted houses. Kerr says, "From the beginning, Greeks, Romans, and other ancient civilizations created gods to speak to their fears of an unforgiving world. To bring these fears to life, they put on plays, spawning theatrical techniques still used in today's haunts, like fog, fake blood, and trapdoors. Again, though, I couldn't find any evidence of the use of smoke or fog effects before the Globe Theater, which had occasional use of cannons or fireworks. And in reference to the cannons, according to bardstage.org, this particular Globe Theater special effect eventually leading to the fire of 1613, which led to the total destruction of the Globe Theater within just 2 hours. Anyway, as civilizations grew and people migrated, a fear of the elements transitioned into a fear of other people in the form of ghosts, demons, and witches. Christians in the Middle Ages traveled from town to town, putting on plays and pageants to scare locals away from sin. By the 1800s, industry was booming, and with it the fear of a rapidly unrecognizable world, one fueled by electricity and other mystifying inventions. This sparked a renewed interest in ghosts, spirits, and the supernatural. People paid to watch magic shows, get their fortunes told, and enter houses supposedly haunted by spirits. Horror was incorporated into all sorts of theater and attractions. According to a whole bunch of different sources, Marie Tussaud took the decapitated heads of aristocrats killed during the French Revolution, made death masks of them, and showcased them in what she called her Chamber of Horrors. According to Enric H. March in National Geographic, though, there is, in fact, little evidence outside Tussaud's own account that she directly sculpted the masks. But, despite the uncertainty, the notion of Tussaud undertaking such grisly work became one of the most famous aspects of her life story. There were also many different iterations of the magic lantern projector-based horror theater Phantasmagoria in the 17 and 1800s. Then starting in the late 1800s, the Grand Guignol shocked and disgusted audiences with graphic displays of simulated violence.
The Grand Guignol began in 1897 and lasted about 60-some years. The word means big puppet, and the idea behind it was to create a sort of sensationalist puppet show, not for children, but for adults. The productions generally ran according to an idea of what they called hot and cold showers. Sex farces interspersed with horrific plays, with comedies, and then horrific plays yet again. It's a theater of horror and terror, but the actors actually suffered horror and terror, sometimes more than the audiences. Many of them were injured in the productions. Two of them died. And the effects were pretty astounding, of people being mutilated, of eyes being gouged out, of blood flowing from the heart, from the head, legs being cut off, of people being gobbled by pumas and lions.
McKendry mentions the Pepper's Ghost illusion contraption, and later traveling carnivals with quote-unquote freak shows in the early 1900s. The first recorded explicit haunted house I could find is the Orton and Spooner Ghost House in England in 1915. Warner describes it as a dimly lit funhouse, where floors shook and demonic screams roared from phonographs. I think Wikipedia says it's steam-powered or something. I couldn't find any, solid sources on the Orton and Spooner house, even though it came up again and again as, the first one. The first recorded horror-themed dark ride I found was The Ghost Train, built in 1930. I really loved Michael Stevenson's documentary, The American Scream, which is about 3 different home haunts in the same area and the people who run them. It was easily my favorite out of the documentaries I watched for research, and it's genuinely endearing and moving. In the film, Stevenson interviewed David Lindblom of Haunt Forum, who said that home haunts probably started in the 1970s.
The legacy of home haunting goes probably back into the 70s, I would have to think.
Nope. It's wrong. Again, in Trick or Treat, A History of Halloween, Morton says that while it's hard to pinpoint the exact origins of what is now known as the haunted attractions industry, it probably had its rough beginnings in the 1930s, with parents setting haunted houses up because they were anxious to divert the attention of pranking boys. From Christopher Borelli in the Chicago Tribune. The Tribune, in 1901, ran an editorial complaining that violent tricks had become the rule. There is no reason men should be beaten and women insulted simply because the next day is the 1st of November. Between 1906 and 1925, he describes power being cut, tires slashed, an office burned, a shop owner dying of smoke inhalation when his shop was set on fire, and a 1925 Halloween party in Ogden Park that ended with police shooting at kids. Jillian Brockel in the Washington Post recounts severe injuries, dynamite, and a traffic prank that killed 3 people, as other Halloween pranks during that time period. 2history.com pieces, Halloween was once so dangerous that some cities considered banning it, and The Great Depression Origins of Halloween Haunted Houses traced the peak of prank backlash to 1933, when those common Halloween pranks became particularly brutal. The latter cites a Christian Science Monitor piece describing the Black Halloween of 1933, where hundreds of young men overturned automobiles, sawed down telephone poles, and taunted police, with the response being that schools and civic organizations began to sponsor parades and costume contests, part of a nationwide drive for a safe Halloween. Morton describes early home haunt events like Trails of Terror, and provides an excerpt from the 1937 edition of the Minneapolis Halloween Fun Book. Here's that same section from the 1951 edition, suggesting hanging old fur, or strips of raw liver, or hairnets from the ceiling to scare people who go through your haunted house, and even providing an entire jump scare scenario, with a scary dog, from the Tumblr of the Hennepin County, Minnesota Library. The Minneapolis Halloween Committee was formed in 1933 after the city awoke to more than $100,000 in property damage from Halloween night that year. The goal of the new committee was to provide an outlet, read parties, for children of all ages in order to keep kids off the streets and keep garbage cans intact and windows clean. Well-planned parties throughout the city significantly reduced juvenile delinquencies the following year. This map, produced by the Board of Park Commissioners, compared the delinquencies in 1933 and 1934. Police calls were significantly reduced, as were streetlight replacements and false fire alarms. Starting in 1937, the Halloween Committee, in collaboration with the Minneapolis Star newspaper, began a program they called Halloween Party School. Sessions were held at the YWCA to instruct the public on running successful parties, what food to serve, decorations to hang, games to play, costumes to make and wear, and ghost stories to tell. The Halloween Fun Book, published in 1937 by the Mayor's Halloween Committee, served as a guide for party givers and other communities interested in the Minneapolis plan. The book could be purchased at libraries and newsstands throughout the city. As Morton says, the guidebook also suggests that different parts of the maze may have different themes. Ghoul's Jail, Madhouse, Tunnel of Terrors, and Dead Man's Gulch are mentioned. Other tips include a chair wired to deliver a mild electric shock, the rental of a creepy abandoned house to hold the event in, and an autopsy, in which guests are seated before a backlit screen behind which fake surgery is performed. So that, as far as I can tell, is the origin of home haunts. The big-budget spectacle haunted house traces its origins to the Haunted Mansion opening in Disneyland in 1969 after more than a decade of planning. What made the Haunted Mansion so successful and so influential was not its similarity to haunted houses and dark rides, that is, tawdry carnival haunted houses, but its startling use of new technology and effects. Ghosts were no longer simply sheets hung from a tree, but were instead actual shimmering translucent figures that moved, spoke, and sang. Projections, the use of ghost glass, maybe here she's talking about Pepper's Ghost, because the Haunted Mansion definitely uses the Pepper's Ghost effect, and pneumatics provided the astonishing effects. And the mansion also featured intricate sets, beautiful artwork, original music and sound effects, and superb voice acting. In 1973, Knott's Berry Farm experimented with starting their own horror attraction using an existing ride. It was a success, and Knott's Scary Farm was born.
In 1973, Knott's Berry Farm became the world's first theme park haunt.
They changed the whole theme park over for Halloween to a Halloween event.
May Blitz's piece, Who Invented the Haunted House? The DIY History of a Halloween Tradition and Popular Mechanics, says that around the time the Haunted Mansion opened, the United States Junior Chamber, or the Jaycees, a civic organization for young adults, began encouraging members to put up haunted houses as a way to fundraise. It became such a dependable and lucrative way to raise money that a chapter head in Bloomington, Illinois, named Tom Hilligoss, wrote a manual and formed the Haunted House Company to help other chapters. Hilligoss was the first so-called haunted house expert, traveling across the country giving seminars about how to construct the houses, train actors, advertise, and even how to properly put on horror makeup. When I got started in the late 1970s, there were like 10 Jaycee houses in every city, says Larry Kirchner, one of the world's foremost experts on haunted houses.
The Jaycees, the Junior Chamber of Commerce, they were involved with Halloween events dating back to the 20s and into the 50s, doing Halloween parades in the 60s. And then by the early 70s, they were doing the Jaycee haunted houses.
And here in Livonia, Michigan, these enterprising Jaycees ran 20 to 30,000 kids and adults through this house.
Various other organizations during this time period used haunted houses to fundraise, such as the religious group Campus Life, March of Dimes, and so on.
What a lot of people don't realize is an evangelical Christian group called Youth for Christ was one of the biggest influences on haunting. They started Campus Life haunted houses.
The first haunt I ever went to was something called Campus Life. And I remember being just terrified of going through that.
It was Campus Life that created a lot of the standard elements that are found in haunted attractions today.
They did the checkered rooms, they did the surgery scene, they did the clowns.
And this was an effort to get youth more involved with the church.
When I went through that and came out the other side, I was like, wow, that's what I want to do. I want to create haunted attractions.
There were also hell houses, which Morton refers to as a moralistic tableau under the guise of a traditional Halloween walkthrough attraction, where passive audience members watch a series of short plays that each present the commission of a sin in a gruesome fashion. The last room in a hell house usually involves a prayer meeting with the pastor or minister in which he attempts to convert the paying guests to his church. Hell houses may have first appeared in the 1970s, but they didn't gain major attention until a Colorado pastor named Keenan Roberts began selling a Hell House outreach kit with optional extras that include gay wedding, post-birth abortion, and cyber chick multimedia. Then, in 1984, something terrible happened. Around 6:35 p.m. on May 11th, a fire started at the Haunted Castle attraction at Six Flags Adventure in New Jersey. Around 200 firefighters assembled and brought the fire under control by 7:45. And by that time, 8 people, all teenagers, had died. From a New York Times piece from May 13th. There were no sprinklers or smoke alarms inside the haunted castle. A narrow, dimly lit maze of aluminum containers that had 3 exits equipped with panic bars on its 100-foot by 70-foot perimeter. Authorities and witnesses described a fearsome holocaust in which wind-whipped flames soared into the night sky, and temperatures of more than 2,000 degrees melted metal walls and turned interiors into raging infernos. It became like an oven, said Edward J. Turnbach, the Ocean County prosecutor. Witnesses described scenes of confusion and terror as flames erupted shortly after 6:30 p.m., and heavy, acrid smoke began pouring through the corridors, where 16 patrons were groping their way along ghostly sets of make-believe monsters, cobwebs, and eerie sounds. Some of those caught inside were uncertain whether the first signs of trouble were real or just part of the act. After walking for a while, something was choking us, said Joan Mentor, 20 years old, of Brooklyn, who was there with 4 friends. Being that it was a haunted castle, we thought it was something to scare us. I stumbled and fell and got up and just kept running, she said. I saw a light, and then I was outside. I was coughing and rubbing my eyes, and I turned to see if we all got out, and I looked at the castle, and it went up in flames. Witnesses told of bizarre contrasts during the firefighters' grim task. Screams of hilarity from the streaking roller coaster and other rides, the blare of the rock band Golden Earring, and the shouts of hawkers and pitchmen from nearby arcades. The hubbub subsided only after the park was closed at about 8 p.m., 2 hours early. The flames were confined to the haunted castle, and only a few minor injuries were mentioned in first reports of the incident. It was several hours after the fire was brought under control and firefighters had a chance to search the ruins that the bodies were found. Initially, we thought they were mannequins, but then we discovered they were bodies, said Police Commissioner Richard Bories of Jackson Township. Identifications of the dead were based partly on rings, jewelry, car keys, and other possessions found with the victims, and partly on the basis of names of missing youngsters provided by families. 7 of the bodies were found huddled in a corner only 20 feet from an emergency exit, and the 8th victim was found a short distance away. They all suffocated from smoke inhalation. Again, there were no sprinklers or alarms in the haunted castle. They had evidently given up on smoke alarms after repeated vandalism by attendees, and instead used a staff member who walked the attraction looking for issues, who was outside collecting trash at the time of the fire. If you're interested in further details, there's a lot more information online on the potential initial cause of the fire. A 13-year-old witness claimed a 14-year-old boy, never located, accidentally started it, with other more sinister possibilities suggested, what specific codes it violated, how it was exempted as a temporary structure because it was on wheels, and information on various testimonies during trials surrounding the fire. 7 families settled out of court, and the 8th went to trial. Manslaughter charges against 2 Six Flags executives were dropped in favor of community service. From the Chris Heller Smithsonian.com piece, A Brief History of the Haunted House. In the aftermath of their deaths, attractions were shut down, and politicians enacted stronger safety regulations. Volunteer organizations struggled to compete against new competition under tougher rules. Soon, many were forced out of business. It was a watershed moment for the industry, says Kirchner. The JCs got pushed out because their haunted houses were fairly basic. It was based on the premise that people would volunteer, but when you have people opening big haunted houses with lots of advertising, that's hard. During the next 2 decades, the number of professional haunted houses erupted. From David J. Scull's book, Halloween, The History of America's Darkest Holiday, interviewing haunted house designer Leonard Pickle, charity-based charnel houses were crucially important to the exponential growth of Halloween as a modern national obsession. The JCs claim responsibility for instituting the first scary fundraiser, though there is some controversy over exactly which city hosted it. Overnight, says Pickle, it went from having a few seasonal haunted houses to having hundreds, then thousands. Then other charities jumped on the bandwagon. There were several charity haunts around the country that just started doing huge numbers, and it wasn't long before the entrepreneurial element noticed and started contracting with charities for a percentage of the gross, or just doing it themselves. Slowly but surely, in almost all markets, the for-profit haunted houses pushed the non-profit haunted houses out of business, either to extinction or to a much more limited role, he says. It will startle no one to learn that the main reason was money. A for-profit haunted house can spend $5,000 on a prop. It can spend $100,000 on advertising if it wants to. A non-profit event just can't compete with that kind of capital. Although some charity houses hung in there, and there are still charity houses today, it's just very difficult for a haunted house that doesn't have that much money to comply with safety regulations or to compete with other big budget houses.
And as a home haunter, you're just thinking about the art. You're thinking about scaring people. As a pro hunter, you have to think about insurance and payroll and parking and sprinkler systems, and there's just so much to it that a lot of potential pro hunters never go into it.
So ideally we want to hang a bunch of stuff like this where you have the intestine and stuff, but we can't hang it from the ceiling because the fire department doesn't want us to do that. And we have to comply with those rules. It's part of my job to make sure everything like this lovely lady right here, she can't have anything hanging below. Because if any of these things go like this and they can be lit on, the fire department can come in, pull that, and they can light this on fire, and I gotta take this whole prop out.
About 10 years ago, we were forced to put in an entire sprinkler system in the building. Again, we're a non-profit haunt. You heard, $1,000 construction budget. Well, it cost us $28,000 to put in a fire suppression system about 10 years ago. And there was a change, and this building needed to be hardwired. So we ended up having to put in this lovely pipe that runs to the water main. And this lovely pipe cost us an additional $12,000.
For new haunted houses, I've asked other haunters that question, and their response is don't do it. It's really hard to get a haunted house started nowadays, especially with all of the city restrictions and limitations. You have to know how to market your business well. You have to have enough money to even get off the ground. If you're gonna open some tiny little haunted house that isn't going to have much exposure, it's not even worth your money or time. There's so much that has to go into it that a lot of people don't understand. The safety restrictions, the fire codes. So you really got to do a lot of research before you dive in and try and start. It's so much more difficult than it was when this place opened in the 70s. They really didn't have a whole lot of rules because haunted houses were new. But after that fire that happened in New Jersey in the 90s, when those kids were killed, it really changed the industry forever. So you really got to know the ins and outs of the city laws and the financial restrictions you're up against, because they require sprinkler systems and very expensive fire alarms that are probably worth more than some of these haunted houses are. So yeah, you've got to really have a lot of money and have knowledge of the local laws.
From the Blitz piece. Bigger private entities took notice of the JC's success and began launching big-budget commercialized haunted houses. At the same time, Hollywood movies, which for years relied on physical effects, animatronics, and live actors, were moving to CGI, SFX, I think Blitz means VFX there, not SFX, I don't know, and animation. Many people who once worked in movies building those props and creating those effects saw these live haunted houses as a new way to ply their trade. The movie industry was a 100% practical effect industry. The people who made the big bucks were the practical effect geniuses, says Kirchner. One of the things that capitulated the haunted house industry was that Hollywood got rid of their need for practical effect people, and they found the haunted house industry was starving for good sculptors, good smelters who could make props and sets. As far as big-name theme park haunted house events, Six Flags started their Fright Nights in 1986, renaming them Fright Fest in 1993. Universal Studios Orlando started Fright Nights in 1991, changing the name to Halloween Horror Nights the next year, and launching in its Hollywood location in 1997. Disney, starting in 1995, also holds Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party. There are also home haunts. A man named Bob Burns was famous for very elaborate home haunts. There are family-friendly haunt-adjacent fall activities like pumpkin patches and corn mazes, which Morton refers to as agritourism or agritainment. Huge industry conventions for haunters. Extreme haunted houses like Blackout and others. Fuck McCamey Manor. I hate McCamey Manor. The documentary Haunters is ruined by that weirdo being such a big part of it, being such a focus. People in the industry seem to hate him. I don't understand how he's allowed to still be open. I don't think he should be given as much attention as he is. Long live the American Scream, the good haunted house documentary. Watch that one. Haunters had some other interesting people, but I cannot stand that man. Haunted houses in other countries, coming from totally separate histories and traditions and cultural contexts compared to American haunted houses, and so on. There's so much more I could talk about, but I wanted to get this video done before the end of October and focus on building out a timeline, rather than on analysis or spotlighting individual attractions. Though I will say, Netherworld, my personal favorite haunted house, opened in Atlanta in 1997. I love haunted houses. In the process of researching this video and reading all these pieces and watching these documentaries,
howdy folks, my name is Buford Cletus and I'd like to welcome you to Cutthroat Cabin.
It was some of the most fun I've ever had making a video essay. apart from learning about the Six Flags fire, which has kind of made me sad and angry, and having to deal with people who try to legitimize Rest McCamey. Don't legitimize someone like that. As a note, haunted houses are the type of attraction whose histories are subject to either exaggeration or outright fabrication. So, while I was rigorous in my research, maybe take some of what I covered, or what you see if you start looking into haunted houses, outside of documented historic events, with a grain of salt, because regardless of how many advanced sprinkler systems and animatronics the big haunts have now, it's all still spectacle and smoke and mirrors. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider donating to me on Patreon, so I can keep making videos like this one. I have some other horror-based videos up, including a video about the Uncanny Valley, and a video about Hannibal, and a bunch of horror film reviews. I'm on the teen superhero body horror actual play podcast, Critical Bits. I might make more haunted house videos. I got the idea for doing this video towards the end of September when I was paneling at Monsterama, and I put on a panel about the history of haunted houses, and I was like, wow, this is really interesting. And I could pretty easily make a video about this, although it took me like a month to make it, which honestly isn't that long for the amount of research that it took. I would love to one day make like a full-fledged documentary about the history of haunted houses, rather than like a video essay made in a month, but that would require a lot more money. So like I said, if you like what I do and you want to support it, please donate to my Patreon. I also have a Ko-fi that you can donate there. I'll link all that in the description, and like I'll probably post on Medium like a transcript of this video with links to everything. I'll link some of the stuff in the description, but there's just so many links cited. So if you would like a link to something I talk about, just ask in the comments or ask me on Twitter or something and I'll link it to you. Thank you for watching and happy Halloween!